This is the Writers Are People Too podcast, where I just can't get writers to shut up. Tonight, we have with us Boris Bacic. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, my name is Boris, as you said. I'm from Serbia. I write horror books in English. English is my second language, but I sort of just speak English better than I do Serbian. So, and now it's a little too late to go back to, fix it all and write in Serbian. So I just went ahead and started publishing it for the American market. There's nothing much more interesting about me. I graduated from it's like a vocational school for coaches. So that's like completely not related to my current profession. I went through a lot of these different, jobs that I did and all that until I landed, where I am now. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, I never would have known that English was not your first language. You speak it excellently.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations. I speak English and a smidgen of Spanish. And there's this joke I like to tell. It's, if someone who speaks 3 languages is trilingual, someone who speaks 2 languages is bilingual, someone who speaks 1 language is American.
Which state do you live in, if you don't mind me asking?
So I currently live in North Carolina, but I hail from California.
Okay, cool. So that's probably where you learned your Spanish, from California, right?
Yeah, exactly. I studied a little bit in high school, and to be honest, I didn't retain much of it. But then I got a job where I was working with a lot of Hispanic people, and I practiced a little bit every day. And so, I'm okay at it. I'm not excellent, but I get by. I can order a taco and figure out where the bathroom is, right? Yeah. Cool. So, I managed to find you on Amazon, and it looks like you're quite a prolific author. How many titles exactly do you have?
I can't tell you the exact number. It's about 30 something. I think it's close to 40 when you count all the collections, all the box sets and everything, so it's, let's say, close to 40.
Mm-hmm. And how long you been writing for?
Well, we started publishing in 2019. But before that, I was writing to Reddit's No Sleep forum for a couple of years. So that's where I got a lot of experience. Before that, I used to listen and read to, a lot of creepypasta stories. And I got a lot of, just it influenced my writing. So afterward, in 2020 is when I actually started publishing actual books.
Got it. Yeah, I've dabbled in Reddit subreddits for writing. Haven't had too much success, though. One time I did a 2-sentence horror, and I got like 8,000 upvotes on that, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about posting to Reddit. I've had mixed experiences and mixed feelings overall. I think a lot of writers go to Reddit and they go to writing subs and they post their writing expecting that to be their target audience, when in reality it's not really. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, so the thing is, with Reddit, you can have both experiences. It can be really bad, it can be really good, it can be mild as well. It really depends on how lucky you get. A lot of the times the algorithm plays a role, like how many upvotes you're going to get, how many people are going to see your posts. And it's like I've noticed that some of my stories that I've turned into books were not that good, whereas other stories that I've posted that I've published as books that did really bad, were really popular on Reddit. You're going to have these polarized experiences, and there's sometimes just no rule to it. It's kind of like this domino effect. A few people like your post, they comment, and then other people start seeing it, and so on. It's very important to have this kind of a clickbait title. That's the one thing I've learned. You can't just call it based on whatever your title for the book is going to be or whatever. You need to call it something that's going to be like, I don't know, I took up a job and something's very wrong with it, something like that. That's that's how I started with my security guard stories. They gained a lot of traction before I published them as a collection. And I've seen that so many authors, there were a few authors who actually got movie deals, with Netflix and so on. There was what was his name, Marcus Cleaver. He released a book recently. He got a deal with Simon and Schuster, And he got a movie deal where Blake Lively is going to star in it, so it was a big thing.
Hmm.
So I guess a lot of people afterward started coming to No Sleep in the hopes that they're going to be scoped by these scouts, whereas in reality, the chances of that happening are very very small. Not impossible, but you can't
Hmm.
just hang around there and hope to find some kind of success, because even if you wanted to find an audience there, the problem is most people are not going to follow you through platforms. When I
Hmm.
went to Amazon, I did have a few loyal followers who actually start buying my books on Amazon, but most of them were on No Sleep, on Reddit. They're there for free and snappy stories. They're not going to budge from there.
Hmm.
So that's just something we need to learn. No matter how many times people say like, "Oh, I would buy your books and I would follow you," and whatever, it doesn't happen most of the time.
Yeah. So, looking at a lot of your book covers, and then you're talking about going on No Sleep, it seems that horror is your favorite genre to write in. Is that more or less
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, mainly horror. I did try a few thrillers. I tried dabbling with thrillers, but I just did not like it nearly as much as horror. So I stick with horror. Yeah.
So what calls to you about horror?
I guess ever since an early age, I just enjoyed this feeling of suspense, of being scared. Fear of the unknown, as Lovecraft said it. And there were just so many things that just resonated with me. I guess I probably grew up watching things I shouldn't have watched as a kid. There was no parental control and all that back then. But there were lots of these movies I grew up with that I couldn't, sleep because of. For weeks and so on, and I guess that kind of infiltrated my psyche, and this is where I am now. It might be like a
Hmm.
um, I can't figure the word out. My brain just stopped.
Hey, if English is your second language, I'll give you a
Yeah.
pass. It's okay.
All right.
um, I there's lots of women that I've noticed. My wife in particular, she loves like creepy murder mysteries and stuff like that. And I ask her why she likes that. And she says it's like so that I can put myself in the character's shoes and kind of like see what I would do in their shoes in this similar
Yeah.
situation. Um, when you're writing, are you writing to kind of put the reader into this fantastical situation to show them what they would do, or are you just trying to scare the reader, or like what's your goal with it?
Well, the thing is with horror, I think the main thing that makes it scary is that it's something that can happen to pretty much anybody. Average Joes like you and me. You put them in this, like you said, fantastical situation, and they're not in it voluntarily. They're, thrust into this situation. They need to deal with it, and I think there's a lot of fear coming from that. The choice being taken out of your hands. And
Hmm.
then there's, of course, the whole. There's a lot of subgenres for horror. Whether it's supernatural creature features or something that scares you is not going to scare me. And vice versa. And I think a lot of people just kind of, it's a personal experience when it comes to horror, So many of them are going to delve into it, hoping to, I guess it's an adrenaline rush, Many people, especially the ones who read extreme horror, they're just looking for that next fix, like the next gruesome thing they can read that can, just scare them out of their wits, or, just something that's going to be grotesque. For me, I
Hmm.
don't delve into that so much. I prefer the atmospheric kind of horror, the the suspenseful stuff, the paranormal, the staring into darkness and seeing things that aren't really there, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually had that as one of my later questions. Sometimes the source of the horror is very different amongst different subgenres. Like you said, there's like a cryptid, or perhaps like an evil individual, like a psycho axe murderer, or like a spiritual ghost, or something like that. So you said which one do you tend to steer towards more?
I go more towards supernatural, not so much human villains. I
Hmm.
guess I understand both aspects of it, because the former is the like I said, fear of the unknown. We don't really know what's possible, what's not. I've A friend of mine, a cop from Texas, he said, he can take down bad guys. He does all these dangerous things at work, but if he sees a haunted house, he's going to be out of there miles away before you even said the sentence. Um,
Guns don't work against ghosts, huh?
and whereas for other people, they see this kidnapper or murderer or intruder, and these are things that really happen, and for them that feels more real because these are things that actually can happen to anybody, and that's what makes them
Mhm.
so personal to those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wanted to chat about your book Radio
Mhm.
Tower, and I was reading your blurb. I found that on Amazon, and just to summarize, it looks like Chris, your main character, he's a software developer, and he gets reassigned to a small town in Oregon, and there's this radio tower that's sending townsfolk into a hypnotic trance. So, what was your original inspiration for this novel?
Well, this was my first novel, by the way, that I had actually written, and
Oh,
it holds a special place in my heart because of that. And I do love small town horror. What happened was I was actually living in the old apartment where I was living. I was on the fourth floor, and across from me there was it was like the outskirts of the town, and there was a radio tower. And every night at a certain time, I would see the lights in the tower blinking. This was around the time when I started posting stories to No Sleep, and my mind was just reeling all the time with like, what kind of idea could I come up with next? And the signal from the radio towers, the blinking light, that just kind of got me thinking, okay, but what if there's something sinister about this? And I kind of sat on that idea for 6 months or so before it turned into a story because I really wanted to make it good, and it's easy to come up with ideas, but actually turning them into stories or books, that's an entirely different thing.
hmm yeah. Um, so we kind of talked about this a little bit ago, but Chris just seems like this normal guy thrown into this situation. You don't have this like when I write, I like writing science fiction and fantasy where the main character is someone special. Now, perhaps they have to turn into someone special, but like you mentioned with horror, it's just like a normal person, and people can relate to this being a normal person with this crazy thing happening to them. Do most of your characters in most of your books, are they just normal people, or do you ever have someone who's perhaps like a ghost hunter or something like that?
There have been a couple of characters that had like that, but even with them, but especially with these normal people, that's the beauty with horror, that bad things can happen to anybody. Nobody is safe,
Mhm.
not even the main character. And I think that's what gives that fear factor. It accentuates that fear factor. So I usually try to stick with these average Joes that are like, oh, I'm in this situation. I've never been in this situation. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna die and whatever. And these are things that kind of like make characters relatable, because most of us, we have not been in these
Mhm.
situations, any kind of life-threatening situations, and we can kind of relate more to
Yeah.
that through the characters suffering in the book.
hmm So you mentioned you live in Serbia,
Yeah.
was it? And this book takes place in Oregon. Have you ever lived in Oregon or visited Oregon, or is this just I did a bunch of research on a small town in the middle of the United
Oh
States
man,
somewhere?
yeah. I've never been to Oregon, and you would be surprised to see how much research it took. It's like I was like, how long does it take to get to Voodoo Donuts from this one place? And then I had to, use the maps to see an accurate calculation. I mean, the town is fictional, because I've had a few people because most of my books are set in Oregon. I've had people from Oregon tell me like there's a lot of inaccuracies in your location, so I
Mm.
started kind of making the locations more vague. But I can't remember where it was, but I saw these landscapes in Oregon, all these forests and all that, and I was like, wow, this place looks really nice. And I was inspired partly by Stephen King, because all his books are set in Maine, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna set mine in Oregon.
Mm. So multiple of your books are set in Oregon then?
Most of them are set in Oregon, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion when you're talking about like a real person or a real location or a real event, and how realistic do you want to make it in comparison to making things more fictional for your story. And this is kind of why I stick to fantasy and science fiction, because I can just make shit up
Yeah.
and no one can be like, hey, and that's inaccurate. And I'll be like, in my universe, that's exactly how
And
it
it's
is.
so liberating when you're making a book like that, and you don't need to worry about, the realistic parts of it, the locations and whatnot. For me, especially, I don't
Mhm.
need to do that damn research, with the maps and with like especially because I'm Serbian, and I'm like, okay, what's the equivalent of a brand for, washing dishes, and putting that into books and whatnot.
Mhm.
And this takes just a
Mhm.
chunk of my time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are you a full-time author, or is this kind of a side gig
Yeah,
for
I'm
you?
a full-time author. I went full-time in 2021. I had a job before that. Then there was COVID and there were a lot of layoffs and whatnot. And by then I was able to transition to full-time, which I was really lucky to do thanks to, Amazon's algorithm. And, I guess my books just took off for some unknown reason to me. And right now I'm full-time and it's going pretty good.
That's awesome. You're living my dream right now. And it disheartens me a little bit when you said that you don't know why you're successful, because that was one of my main questions. I was going to be like, how do I also be
You
successful?
know,
I don't recall which Facebook group I found you on.
mm, it must have been
I
20
would have
books,
to go
probably
and
20
look.
books. 20
20
bucks to
to 50K.
50K, yeah. It's like, okay, I said, that I don't know why I'm successful. That's also kind of a polite way of not saying my books are just good, I don't like to be
You
that
can
guy.
say that,
No, I
okay?
don't like to be that guy, and it's like, I think a lot of the times it was a lot of factors. One of them might have been the fact that, my books were good. Back when I started out, my prose was terrible. I think it still is, I mean, I'm never happy with it, but I found a lot of these Reddits and forums where people said like, "Oh, you should read Boris's books. They're really good. The prose is not that great, but the stories are amazing." And I realized I got something, some good ideas maybe about that. Then there was, the fact that I published a lot of books really fast, when I first started out, because I knew that my marketing is just going to suck. And I started doing the Michael Anderle method, which was, just stack a bunch of books, and if you have enough of them, they're going to earn money, and you're hopefully going to be able to go full time. And that's, it
Mhm.
seems, how most people are doing it, self-published authors these days. And I've even tested this with my wife's account. She is publishing thrillers, so this was a brand new account. Tried these strategies, and they seem to work nicely. So yeah.
So just publish tons of books is what you're saying.
Yeah, but you also need to have some kind of plan behind that. You need to have a good cover. You need to have a good blurb. You need to find ways to test those things. And usually when you run ads, you probably know the rule. If you have a lot of clicks, but nobody's buying your book, that means the cover is good, the blurb is bad. If you have a lot of impressions, but nobody's clicking your ad, that means the cover is probably bad. So there are a lot of these things that I've studied, and it was a lot of things. Mark Dawson's course was, really helpful for a lot of people. There were other courses I took. There were just so many things I've learned when I started out. It was just a lot of work, and you kind of slowly put things together one by one to see what works for you, because it's not going to be like, here's everything you need to know on this one course in this one course, and that's going to work for you. No, it doesn't work that way. You're going to have to experiment a lot, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error before you find what works for you. For me personally,
Mhm.
it's Kindle Unlimited. That's where I get most of my money. So I roll all my books into Kindle Unlimited, and that seems to help a lot with the page reads. That seems to boost the ranking of the books themselves, and then that in turn causes, people to buy the books more because it's being organically shown.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And a little bit ago you said, kind of tongue in cheek, like, oh, I don't want to say how good my books are. Um, but let's pretend for a moment that we have someone who is an excellent author, but they've not yet been discovered. Is it really just their cover sucks or their blurb sucks, or is there just an element of luck? Or how can someone best set themselves up to disseminate if they are an excellent author already?
Right. So the problem is when you want to make a living as an author, you're going to have to put the artistic side um, kind of on the back burner a little bit, not completely, because art is the main reason why we're writing, but you're going to have to prioritize marketing. What is marketable? What do people want? Do they want snappy, fast books? Do they want, something that's, like an action thriller, combination with horror, for example? Do they want somebody who's like a badass character in the book? And then you need to look at the covers. The covers are, it's like everybody has an idea for a cover. And don't judge a book by its cover. They say, but that is not true for us because the
Yeah.
first thing they're going to judge is the cover. The first thing I'm judging is the cover, and based on that, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to get the book or not. And there's this sort of trend when you look at a genre, for example, fantasy. You're probably going to see that there's a lot of similarities in covers, at least in the top selling ones. So you're supposed to look at them and you're supposed to incorporate those elements so that they're kind of distinguishable, because readers, when they look at covers, they're able to recognize them based on fonts, based on colors, based on the backgrounds, and so on. And it's very important to kind of since they have this in their subconscious, you need to have it there so that if it's a small thumbnail, they see it and right away they know, okay, I know what genre this is. I like the title. It's right there for me to see it. I'm going to grab this book, or I'm at least going to click on it to see what it is because it intrigued me enough. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of these little elements that need to be taken care of. And it's just like a rabbit hole sometimes. It can feel very overwhelming at first, when you're starting out, when you
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing. I felt like I was losing my mind. Thank God I don't have hair to pull out, but and it's like, but slowly you start to get it. You get this little cog, then another one, and slowly you're able to put them. You fit them into a big machine, and it just works perfectly afterward. You just got to find what works for you, whether that's a newsletter, whether that's Amazon ads, Facebook ads, certain types of cover, certain types of, tropes that you're going to be following for your genre and so on. And of course, genre plays a big role because horror, for example, is a very small genre. It's very, very difficult to make a living from horror. And so many people, when they started out, told me, it's okay to write thrillers, it's okay to write anything else, but horror is always going to be an uphill battle. And I don't know if the industry has changed in the past few years or so. Maybe that's one of the things, because I can see it's becoming a little more popular. But anyway, it just worked for me. I was persistent because I was like, okay, I do not want to write something that's going to make me hate writing. I want to write stuff that, the reason why I started writing was because I loved writing horror and I wanted to stick with horror,
Yeah. Yeah, you said a couple things that really hit close to home. One, we're artists at heart and we want to keep making our art, right? But then as for the last 10 minutes, we've been talking about how, and this comes up time and time again whenever I'm interviewing authors. I've interviewed probably 100 authors at least by now. And, you're an entrepreneur if you're going to be a self-published author. You're not just a creative. And it's difficult to separate for a lot of people, or rather to learn how to be an entrepreneur and a creative, as opposed to just, I'm going to be a creative and have, someone else take care of all the business stuff for me. So I guess we're all in this learning process of marketing together. And that's the hard part for me. I recently published a book, and actually I'm going to send you my cover after this, and just tell me if the cover sucks.
Yeah, anything you need,
because I had a good amount of impressions, right, cool. But maybe no one's clicking.
I'll check it out. I don't know if I can give you a good advice because I don't know much about fantasy.
Yeah, please.
But I will check it out. I can definitely tell what's a bad cover, and I see so many of these. It's like people make them at home. Some of them are good, don't get me wrong, but most of the times it's like, you wouldn't let a cover artist write your book. And that's why you shouldn't be making your covers, because they are professional when it comes to that. They know exactly what you need if you hire a good one, of course. The one I go with, thecovercollection.com is excellent. She is very professional, the woman who works there. And I've been, buying her covers for years now. They're not even that pricey, which is great, and I've seen so many.
How much could you expect to spend?
For a paperback and for a ebook, it comes around $150, $60, I think, something like that.
Oh, that's not bad.
That is really, really good. And like I said,
Can you remind me the name?
Thecovercollection.com.
Okay. I'll check that out.
Right
after.
there, very prominent. Like she's one of the top ones, right, with Rocking Book Covers. Rocking Book Covers is really good for action thrillers, I think. Okay. So yeah. I had a professional artist do mine, and they're an excellent artist, but they're not a cover designer. I kind of designed the cover and had a professional artist take care of the pictures. So
the picture I think is great, but maybe the design itself just sucks. I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of that here in a few
Yeah, the
minutes.
font is really important. I've seen that this is something that I wasn't able to discern right away when I started. But it kind of comes with experience. You also have groups in Facebook. On Facebook, you can post to any kind of groups. There's critique of cover, critique of blurbs. You can kind of get some idea there. But as always, you need to take it with a grain of salt, because I made this
Yeah.
mistake of, when I started and I started posting my covers there, asking for advice. Most of these people did not publish in horror, so they didn't really know what's good and what's bad. So I got so much mixed information. So that's something you got to be really careful with. But the font, when it comes all together, blurb, font of the cover, the actual cover, it kind of paints the full picture. What's going to happen with the book. And you can get sort of an idea of whether it's going to do good or bad. And it's the one problem, coming back earlier to the thing you mentioned about art and all that. I see so many people who want to keep everything there in the book because they feel like that's the artistic part that they want to retain, and that is fine, But even when you're published traditionally, the editors are heavily going to edit that thing, so that you kind of make it more um, written to the market. If something is a little too slow, doesn't matter if your point was, you wanted to build more suspense. If it's too slow at that point, they're probably going to cut it out. So there's a lot of things there that just, nowadays, unfortunately, it's all come down to what is marketable, what can be sold, what's going to make us money. There's of course the thought-provoking part of it. The books that are, I've seen a few of those, but it's just so difficult to make a living with those because you need to go viral. Going viral is very difficult.
Yeah. Well, you've had a wealth of information for me today. I appreciate all of that. Anything else before I let you go?
Nope, that's it.
All right, awesome. Everyone, we had Boris Bacic.